Hi everyone, I'm going to start with a quote. The price for ignoring or distorting the body's messages is being unable to detect what is truly dangerous or harmful for you, and just as bad, what is safe or nourishing. Self-regulation depends on having a friendly relationship with your body. This is a quote from Dr. Bessel van der Kolk from his book, The Body Keeps the Score, and is a very true quote for myself. So I'll quickly take you back to 2016, a time where Pokemon Go came out and people were just wandering around the streets looking for Pokemon. I was currently in my second year of my bachelor's degree in Hawaii and started to feel off, is the best way I could put it. Now, I had had a history with some struggles with mental health back in high school and thought, I'll go see a therapist again, why not? And started up therapy, but nothing was really happening. I didn't have a lot to say, and I couldn't really explain why I felt off, but I kind of went anyways out of habit and brushed it all aside. But as this was going on and I was entering my third year, I began to get quite sick. And what started as something quite small snowballed about halfway through my third year. It became to the point where I was hardly retaining any food. At a certain point, I pretty much could only eat liquid food. Solid food had just become impossible to even swallow. And obviously from that, rapidly losing weight. At the same time, my body had become so activated that I was often felt almost paralyzed and like I was on electric shock therapy at the same time. I hardly could even leave my apartment to go get the mail down outside. And while all this was happening, I was getting tests right, left, and center. And with every test, it came back, well, there's not a lot I can tell you. There's nothing really going on here. The furthest I got was, yeah, your throat muscles aren't really working that great. And no one could give me an answer. And finally, as it became more dire, my mother actually became concerned that maybe I had something called scleroderma, and some type of it that was infecting my internal organs. So we went to UCSF, got the test done, sat down with the doctor, me and my parents, and the doctor looked at me and said, it's not scleroderma, you can relax now. I was starting to already get angry because I just wanted an answer. And then he said, I think it's anxiety that's causing this. And I was fuming. I was like a bull in the china shop coming out of that doctor's appointment, because based on my experience in the world, what I heard him say was, this isn't actually real, it's just kind of all happening inside of your head. And for me, it was very, very real. And so I had felt unseen and unheard in that moment, but you'll come to find out as I get to the end of this, it was quite a bit different. And for me, this quote really embodies that I was ignoring all of the messages from myself, both on what was dangerous and what was safe, and I had completely lost the relationship with my body at that point as well. And when we talk about with communication in the body, our body gives us a lot of different signs, a lot of different systems will talk to us, and that can be things like acute and chronic pain, heart palpitations, in my case, GI issues and muscle tension, nerve firings, temperature changes, shortness of breath, this is just a short list of them. But it's important that we're able to listen to them, but we really do struggle to do it, especially in today's world. But has it always really been this way? And the answer is no. Historically, we actually used to have a very good connection with the mind and body. And we can actually look to indigenous communities across the world and see how when there's an individual in some sort of peril, they really look at the individual through multiple different lenses, biologically, psychologically, socially, and spiritually. And they really take the person as a whole regarding the whole healing experience. As well, it's a community event. It's usually not an individual type of healing. But we found in the Western world, we started to get this divide around the 17th century, one of these kind of being with the French philosopher René Descartes and his dualism idea that you have the body as one entity, and then you have the mind or soul, used kind of interchangeably, as a other sort of distinct substance. But is this kind of still true today? Where are we today? If it has been that way in the past and kind of has ebbed and flowed. Well, today we're starting to see a resurgence. Around the 20th century, we start to see, actually in the psychology field, these various therapeutic approaches start to come up that really take the mind and body into consideration. So you have some like somatic experiencing, you have Gestalt therapy, EMDR therapy, hypnotherapy, and even art therapy. And actually that's one of my very first art therapy pieces I had ever done. And we find that these approaches, really their big idea is involving the body. But even within clinical practice or counseling practice, you can still utilize various mind-body techniques and practices and movement in general as a way to help heal and build relationships with clients. Because we find that even just how we sit with the client and are within the space and how the client is sitting with us and is within the space really says a lot about the needs, the wants, and the relationship between the two. And this becomes really important with how we read body language and how it's really just as important as verbal language and often tells us a whole lot more. And when we pay attention to it, we can better build the relationship. So kind of like how these two pictures show, with different clients, you start to find different ways of sitting. So with one client, you might find that it's really useful to be quite closer together, but maybe you need to kind of sit more side by side. Face on isn't nearly as good of a way. And then you might have someone come in right after that person who you actually have to sit a bit further apart. And you need to avoid kind of eye contact, no prolonged eye contact. Even within a single session, you could have that change completely. And you're always, as a practitioner, and for me as a counselor, trying to gauge the other person and seeing, do I kind of need to back off and show that I'm giving them some personal space, or do I need to be engaged a bit more and show them that I'm here with them in this moment? And this is where even just small movements in the therapy space plays a really vital role. And, who or what does the mind-body connection help? Well, the who is pretty much everyone. I don't think I've sat with anyone in a session and have gone, oh yeah, this totally isn't relevant to our time here together. It's always been relevant in some sort of capacity. And the what does it help, at least in the therapeutic sense, is many different things. But just looking at research, we have found it be very useful for things like chronic pain, depression, trauma or PTSD, stress, anxiety, and cancer as well. So we're finding now that it's starting to come in both not only in the mental health sphere, but also with the physical health sphere as well in hospitals and clinics too, which is really important. And you might be asking, okay, mind-body connection, brainstem, okay, I'm there with you on that, they communicate, got it. But how deep could it really actually go? And the answer is actually really deep. There was a study done by Yehuda and some other various researchers looking actually at Holocaust survivors, their offspring, and then utilizing a control sample. And they were looking at the FKBP5 gene and researching this gene. And what they found was that the physical response to stress could actually be primed intergenerationally through genetics. So what I mean by that sentence is that they found that the specific site on this gene kind of related to that aspect had some changes on it, and they were looking at the offspring's gene of this. So changes on the offspring's gene was actually able to be attributed to the parents' Holocaust experience and not any of their own experiences, not any of their own traumas or mental health issues. And it's incredibly fascinating because we don't only see the body and communication being important in the here and now and things that are happening, but it's affecting us at a cellular, even DNA level, where genetically things can get passed on. It goes as deep as that. And so where I hope we are heading is really back to a place of mind-body connection. For one, that the mental health practitioners and medical practitioners are looking at a human as a whole and able to communicate to each other, but to see also that client as who they fully are and recognize the whole total of them. And that the mind and body, one is not more real or important than another. And I think that doctor in that office, that was what he was trying to say to me. I was just not ready to hear that yet. What I think he was really saying was, this is really real and this is really happening. And I respect you enough to tell you that I think it's actually anxiety, and I'm not the one who's going to be able to help you with that. He was seeing me as a whole. No other doctor had ever given me that answer before. And he was 100% correct, on top of some other experiences that I had to later process as well, but the anxiety was definitely a huge piece in what was happening with me. The other prospect is that if we start to understand our own cellular level of communication, then we can better understand ourselves, but we can also better understand each other. And that's where we really start to pick up on, as I talked about, these small key kind of movements and body languages that play a really vital role in being able to really be there for each other. And lastly, I hope we take from our own history and the indigenous communities around us and begin to heal together, as healing is an experience not meant to do alone or in parts. It's an experience to have together and as a whole. Thank you.